And for more on the midterm election results, I'm joined by Katie Glueck. She's a reporter covering all things political in and outside of Washington for Politico, a web-based political magazine. Thanks for speaking with us.
Thanks for having me.
Hearing from the U.S. president, and I want to get your reaction to what he said about why he thinks voters cast their vote for the GOP.
This has not been a very good couple of months for President Obama. In a lot of these races, Republicans tried to put him essentially on the ballot. He himself did say a couple of months ago that, in fact, his policies were on the ballot, and that was something that Republicans brought up repeatedly as they tried to tie their Democratic opponents to the president, who, at this point in the game is pretty unpopular in a lot of states that ended up being on the ballot this year.
So do you think this was a huge surprise, or why did the Democrats lose so badly in these midterms?
It's a good question, and a lot of people, had you asked them that yesterday morning, would not have predicted that we would have seen the sweep, I guess, to quite the extent that we did last night and even going into this morning. But we do have to take into consideration some of the national trends here. Historically, midterms have been difficult for the president's party in the sixth term of a presidential administration. But beyond that, going back to that unpopularity factor of President Obama, and you couple that with the fact that a lot of these candidates were Democrats, were competing in states that did not vote for the president in 2012, some didn't vote for him in 2008, then you are looking at a pretty challenging terrain.
So how do you think other countries outside the United States, how should they view these victories? Can they expect to see any major policy changes that could affect them? Or do you think this is better news for the global economy? The stock market closed up today on news of all of this.
It's a really interesting question, and probably one that remains to be seen in terms of what ultimately the now Republican-dominated Congress is able to achieve with the democratically controlled, of course, White House. But both sides, whether it's Mitch McConnell or President Obama, have indicated that they are hoping that they're going to be able to find some places of common ground. You were talking about trade earlier, or that came up earlier on the show, and it's certainly possible that that's one place where we could see some movement.
What do you think, and we might be getting ahead of ourselves here, but what do you think these results will mean for the presidential race in 2016?
Well, that's a question people have been talking about for a while now, for sure. Some observers have said that, now that the Republicans have the Senate, they've got to be very careful not to go too far, because if they sort of overshoot, that may end up being problematic for some Republicans who are trying to run for president in 2016. But at the same time, you take a look at the results from last night, not a good night for Democrats. And that actually has spurred some to say that they hope that Hillary Clinton will announce her intentions as to whether or not she's going to seek the Democratic nomination sooner rather than later, sort of start shifting the focus in a direction that many think would be more positive for the Democrats.
Perhaps that race starts tomorrow. Okay, Katie Glueck from Politico, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.